Is it random, or can you sign up for a special class?
It is random. I have upgraded people to the grand suite. Like if at the in-person events, if they show up in costume, I'm like, well, let me just upgrade you.
Oh, well, that sounds well worth it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of the things that I liked, especially about the book, was the amount of detail that you went into about the furnishings, as well as the technical aspects of the Lindgren and of interplanetary travel to Mars.
Oh,
Sounded like a great cruise. Yeah.
thanks. Have you been on a cruise before?
Yes, many times, I'm
Yeah.
afraid.
So I do a writing excuses, which is a podcast that we do. We've been teaching workshops on a cruise ship
Mhm.
for uh, I don't know, 6 or 7 years now.
Oh.
And so I was like, I want to do this in space. And about the
Mm.
same time, I was like, I want to do Thin Man in Space. And the two things,
Mhm.
parts of it are based on like real cruise ships, which are just bonkers things.
I know, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, we were on a ship that had a bar that was an elevator, and the
Oh.
entire bar like rose up and would go between levels
Mm.
and into an arboretum. It just, I'm like, well, who was like, you know
We thought this up. Yeah.
what?
Well, that sounds like fun. Did it move fast enough that you had to hold on to your drinks as it rose up and down?
It's very, very gentle, very slow, just
Yeah, just sweeping.
up and then back down.
Well, that sounds wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
absolutely. Yeah. Now, the only cruises I have been on with my husband are river cruises with the
Oh,
Avalon Waterways. So I think we've been on four so far, and are
nice.
intending to do another one in 2024. But yeah,
Oh,
but it's quite small. There's 128 people per
oh yeah.
per ship, and you're just going up and down the Seine or the Danube or the Moldau or wherever.
I've been thinking about doing one of those. We've been doing the like 3,000 people on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
Although I did do one with some mutual friends of ours, with Eileen and Jared and Crystal. But we did a cruise, a barge cruise for my
Oh,
50th.
that
And
sounds like fun.
oh, it was beautiful. It was through the south of France. But it
Mhm.
is, it's one of those things where it's like, this is a once in a lifetime cruise for
Mhm.
me. And there are clearly people who do this
All the
constantly. I'm
time.
like, oh, that's
Mm,
aspirations,
mm,
aspirations.
mhm, mhm.
So instead, I just
Yeah.
write about
Well, it may be a little bit different when you are actually part of the entertainment as
it.
well as
Yes,
the
there is
cruiser.
that too. There
Uh-huh.
is that. It's like, hello, everybody. Let's talk about your latest writing project. How is it going today?
Well, that's a good way to start things off.
Yeah, right. And then later in the cruise, it's like, they're there. The writing will be fine. You're okay. You're okay.
This is very hands-on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got to say that I don't teach when I'm cruising and so forth. I am basically just an attraction, you might say. But I wander around talking to people, and I'll
Oh,
usually do one event, where I'll
yeah.
talk, to the assembled for a while, and it's a separate event where I will sign everybody's books. But other than
Yeah.
that, it's such a small ship that you see everybody all of the time.
Right.
So my deal is just that I and my poor husband will be available, pretty much all
Oh,
the time.
nice.
With one exception, we get an hour off for cocktail hour every afternoon. And if we have a little table with only two chairs, and if we're sitting there, no, you may not come and talk to us. But
Yes.
any other time, totally, total
Yeah.
access.
Yeah, that is I mean, that sounds like a pretty good gig, honestly. And also, yes, you absolutely have to have that downtime of
Yeah, when you're not constantly going.
yeah. Yeah, well, and that was actually one of the things that I wanted to do with the book, was
Mhm.
that I have with Tesla, she's quite famous, and people do not think about the constant strain that places on someone when they have to be on all the time, because
Exactly so.
who knows who's watching them, and
Recording you, taking pictures
um,
of you, and so forth.
yeah.
I've seen some really astonishing pictures of myself. Because then, of course, they go post them on the internet.
Yeah, yeah. I was at my event last night was with Adam Savage, and we had an hour for dinner beforehand, and during
Mhm.
that that hour, tucked away in a corner, two different people and the waiter came up to ask for his autograph. And I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
that just seems like that would be exhausting all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it certainly can be. Luckily, I don't usually go in places where everybody knows who I am.
Right. Yeah.
People will, pass me in the grocery store and suddenly do a double take and sidle up and say, "Are you Diana?" I say, "Yes, I am." They say, "Oh, I love your books," and then they back away. So,
My niece texted me earlier today, and she was like, "You're friends with Diana Gabaldon, and you never told me this. How are you even my aunt?" And I'm like, "Sorry." So I'm not sure if you've just given me street cred with my niece or have
I hope
totally
so.
changed things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, what was I going to ask you next? Oh, I love the Thin Man movies. We used to watch them repeatedly all of the time. I could probably quote large chunks of the script. So I was absolutely delighted when I realized or was told that that's what your template was, you might say. Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you a big fan of the original Thin Man movies or
I am.
novels for that matter? Yeah.
Yeah. So I encountered the Thin Man through film first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Me too.
And just the dynamic between William Powell and Myrna Loy as Nick and
Mm-hmm.
Nora. I love how they are like the first mystery is fun, the second mystery is fun, and then after that I am just there for Nick and Nora.
Yeah, basically.
Um,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and what I love is how much they trust each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
there's that scene in the first film where Nora comes in and Nick has another woman in his arms, and there's no question
It's totally
for
fine.
she's
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh, you're comforting someone because he's
Of course.
comforting someone, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, of course. Like there's no
Mm-hmm.
jealousy, there's no and there's a playfulness with them, and I loved that. I love happily married couples, and, and you don't see them modeled all that often in fiction. It's always,
Mm-hmm.
the people at odds with each other, or
Mm-hmm.
will they, won't they,
Mm-hmm.
and while I can enjoy that scenario as well, there is something delightful about a couple that's just like, yeah, no, we're in love, we're married, we solve crime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it goes back to conflict and so forth,
Mhm.
and that's why the other kind of relationship novels thrives and so forth is
Yeah,
because there's nothing more instant than conflict between people.
yeah,
And romances, especially, you have an internal
yeah,
story, you have an external story. The internal one is the most important, and that's where all the emotional conflict comes from. So
yeah,
you are bound to have, by and large, misunderstandings and
yeah,
other kinds of conflict, which luckily you don't have to have in this. In fact, I thought you handled that very well in the parts where Tesla's spouse, Shalmaneser, is suspected of being the murderer, and she's just moving heaven and earth to get him out of durance vile and so
yeah.
forth. And we totally believe her when she believes him. We're
Mhm.
not thinking that he's could possibly be guilty.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, well, of
So
course.
there's conflict, but it's how are we going to get him out of this, and
Yeah,
how are we going
yeah.
to find the truth? And as you say, very much like the Thin Man movies.
Mhm. One of the tricks that I found when I wanted to do at some point is that I treat the relationship like a character.
Oh, good idea. Mm-hmm.
So this is in this, these novels, the character is not dealing with self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
The character is just dealing with the events that are impacting the character. And
Mm-hmm.
while the events can affect the character,
Mm-hmm.
and affect the way the character moves through the world, that character is still, solidly understands who it is. And that was like with that's the way it is with Nick and Nora. They totally understand who they are in relationship to each other. With
Mm-hmm.
Tesla and Shal, they understand who they are in relationship to each other. And even though it's their honeymoon, they're still an established couple who are like, yeah, no, this is who we are. But all of this other stuff, the rest of this is bullshit.
Well, this is basically how a good marriage works.
Right, right.
As long as you're good with your spouse, everything's fine. They'll just
Yeah.
handle it. That's all.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. How do you handle keeping things going? Like because you are quite a ways in.
Yeah, about 4 million words, give or take a
Yeah.
few. Yeah. Well, if you have a long and long enduring relationship, it's not static, or it
Right.
wouldn't endure very long if it was. So things change constantly.
Mhm.
And in some instances, if it's a couple of people who do things that are somewhat out of the ordinary, Clara is not your average housewife who
Yeah.
is, constantly tending babies and so forth. And this is one thing that people say to me, oh, I wish, that Clara had a baby, in the past, so Jamie could help raise it. And I'm going, yeah. I said,
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
would this work? We have a battle upcoming, and Jamie is dressed up. He's about to ride out. Is Claire riding by his side, ready to spring into action? No, she's back there up to her elbows in diapers with somebody clinging to her hem, going, mommy, 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 mommy,
Right.
mommy, mommy. And I'm going, no, we're not doing that.
No,
Anyway,
no,
that's why Brianna is 18 when we first meet her. So we didn't have to do any of that. I mean, I
oh,
have three
clever.
children and I love them dearly, even more so now that they are all grown. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, but they definitely inhibit, romance and, uh,
Yes.
the sensible
Yes.
progression of a plot.
Right.
So,
Yes.
that would be the first thing, is don't have children
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah. Yeah, I opted to go the aforementioned niece and nephew's route, and cats, and those are disruptive enough. Thank
True.
you. I am delighted by everybody who has chosen to raise my geriatric surgeons, because I need somebody to raise that next generation.
Yep.
But yeah, you're right. They are a little disruptive to things moving forward.
Well, this is true, but everything is a trade-off. There are rewards as well as difficulties.
Yeah.
So it just kind of depends on where you are. Um, I take it that you did not have disruptions of that sort when you were beginning to write. So how did you establish your routine? Were you fairly able to just start in and do what you liked, or did you have another job and other obligations that got in the way?
So I started with, I was a puppeteer, and had done that for, I was, I don't know, 12, 15 years into my career. And I had a severe puppet injury.
Ooh.
So I had, like, it was one of those kids who wanted to do everything, and had written through high school and stuff, but I was doing a puppet show and had a stunt go very wrong,
Oh.
and wound up in a cast for about a year, and then another year in physical therapy. But it gave me time to remember how much I enjoyed writing. And so I went back to that. But because I come out of theater and had been a freelancer, I just treated writing like another form of freelancing. It's like, well, this is just another income stream that I'm adding into my arsenal. And so I still do a lot of what I call structured procrastination. It's like I'm working on this project and then I hit a roadblock. It's like suddenly time to work on something else. And it was great because like I could bounce between puppets and writing. And now where I'm at, I do almost no puppetry these days. It's pretty much all writing. And so it's much harder to find the thing that I'm going to procrastinate on that's still productive. It's like, I was joking the other day. It's like I wanted to avoid writing something so badly that my inbox is now 0.
Ooh, I'm impressed.
Yeah. No, I was like, I really did not want to write that scene. But I try. So I have, and I try to be open about this. I have depression and ADHD, which I didn't know for a really long time. And I attributed the problems to like burnout or overwork or laziness. And now that I know what's going on, it's much easier because I recognize the symptoms that are happening, and that gives me, and now I have a better, it's like, oh, this is a symptom of this, and so I can use this tool, which has been very helpful. So on good brain days, I'm like 2,000, 3,000 words a day, and that's great. And then on a bad brain day, I have committed to myself that I will write 3 sentences to mostly check to see whether or not it's a bad brain day. Or it's just that scene's a little bit tricky and I was avoiding writing it. And on bad brain days, the sentences are often things like, I'm tired, I hate everything, I'm going to go to bed now.
Okay, well, hey, it's totally
But,
legit as long as you know what's
yeah,
going on.
yeah. But I open the computer and usually if I write the three sentences, it's more than three. But
Mhm.
that's what I aim for. I don't have a routine in terms of I am happier when I can have a routine,
Mhm.
um, but we live with my parents. My mom has Parkinson's,
Oh, ooh.
which uh,
Mhm.
which I talk about in the afterward. But so there are days where everything is fine, and then there are days where it's like, was that the sound of a body drop? Yep.
Mhm. Yep. Mhm.
I'm gonna not be writing right now.
Yes. Well, priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's um. So, do you have a routine? Are you able to maintain one with traveling off to Inverness and?
Yeah, more or less. It kind of depends on how much I can stay awake at night, with time changes. My
Right.
normal routine, as you probably know, is that I write in the middle of the night, between midnight and 4:30 in the morning is my prime time. I will write, at
Yeah.
different periods during the day, depending on what else is going on. But in the middle of the night, everything is quiet. No one is bothering me. The phone
Yeah.
is not ringing. Even the dogs are asleep.
Yeah.
There's no psychic noise, none.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's quite good. Of course, that leaves my mind free to roam around and look at show dailies and YouTube videos and things like that as a means of escape from the page.
Right.
Because I mean, I have never been formally diagnosed, but I am sure as anybody could be without being formally diagnosed,
Right.
that I also have ADHD. And I learned this by accident, maybe 15 years ago. I was talking to someone professionally on the phone. And at the same time, I was looking at a newspaper quiz. This was back when we still had newspapers.
Mhm.
And it was one about, do you have ADD/ADHD? And I was saying, well, certainly not. But I was reading the questions anyway and, marking yes, no, etc. And I noticed the pattern. About half of the questions dealt with anger. They were saying, how do you deal with frustration? Do you want to kick things? And I said, well, intermittently, yeah, but not all the time, and
Yeah. Yeah.
things like that. And the rest of them had to do with attention. They said, do you feel like you're listening to 8 different TV channels at once? And I was going, yeah, doesn't everybody? Things like
Yeah.
that. And so when I quit the phone call, I added everything up. And I had answered all the anger questions, no, and all the attention questions, yes. I said, okay, well, that explains something, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, well, it wasn't the other way around.
Yeah. I went in because I had been seeing different things on Twitter, and one of them I was like, oh, that feels very much like me.
Mm.
And also realizing that it runs in family and that my dad is like textbook.
Mm.
And I have other family members who are formally diagnosed. And so I went in to talk to my doctor and I started explaining things. And I'm like, okay, but wait, I should actually, okay. And then hang on, I need to give you this piece of information. And she's like, I'm just going to stop you right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Totally
this is your
understand.
prescription.
That's really cool. Yeah. So, do you take medication regularly for it? Sorry, that's a very intrusive question.
No, it's okay. As I said, I talk about this openly. It's like one
Hmm.
of the things that I'm trying to do with the fiction is just to be like destigmatizing a lot of this.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah, no, I do. I can't do a lot of the classic ones because I also have an essential tremor, and
Mhm.
so I'm on something that does not exacerbate the tremor.
That's good.
And it took us a little while to find something that did that.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
But and it when I'm traveling or have at a convention, I find that I don't need it. And
Hmm.
fortunately, it's one that you can hop in and out of without.
That's good.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
crashing in between.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
at home, it's enormously helpful because my executive function is just not. It's never been
It's
strong.
not
Never been strong,
executing.
so to say.
I
Like,
can
why
see
is
that.
this so hard?
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting that you mentioned that being in the midst of a lot of people at a convention or otherwise, essentially, I don't know if it suppresses the ADHD-ness or if it just takes advantage of it. Because
Mhm.
when 1,000 people are talking to you and you're shifting from one topic to another and keeping track of your schedule and
Mhm.
stopping periodically to do interviews and so forth, that is just the way our brains work naturally.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
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 And so I think that's probably what does it. Though I think the adrenaline of the stimulation of talking to people probably helps as well. Yeah, I
Yeah.
personally use caffeine as my only medication, but it works really well.
Yeah, and I can't. I have because of
Mm,
the tremor,
exactly.
and I have a caffeine intolerance.
Ooh,
So the combination of those, it's like when I'm
that would be
tired, I'm
bad.
just tired. I'm
Yeah.
just that's just where we are.
Yeah. Just go and
Um,
take a nap instead.
yeah, yeah. So I know a lot of people who handle it by self-medicating with caffeine, and I'm like, nope, nope. We're
Mhm.
just gonna have to do this. We're my bootstraps. Just gonna.
Yep. Yep. Well,
um,
everybody's different and everybody
yeah.
finds a different way of dealing with what it is you want to do and what it is you have to do.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I've been thinking about that um, as and like starting to write it this way for the last several books, as rather than thinking of like disability or mental illness, it's like I have a set of skills, and my set of
Mhm.
skills are to help me navigate a world that is not built for my brain, but my brain
Mhm.
is perfectly. This is a great set of traits. I can take information from a lot of different places and synthesize them. I can
Mhm.
track a bunch of different things
Uh-huh.
simultaneously. Those are great things to have.
They are.
And then the world is 100% not built for me. It is built for people we're like all of the phone notifications are for people who
Mhm.
it's difficult to get their attention. It's very easy to get my attention.
Yeah, nothing to it.
Yeah, it's super easy. Hard to hold my attention sometimes, but really easy to get my attention. And so I have to develop a different set of skills for compensating for the fact that my phone is built for somebody else's brain.
Mhm. Mhm. True enough.
Yeah.
Yes, someone stole my husband's phone a few days ago, and we had to go through all the nonsense of getting it replaced and starting it up and reactivating it and so forth. Okay, he has an Apple iPhone. I have a Samsung Android. Okay, and never the twain shall meet.
Yeah.
I learned years ago I am not on Apple's wavelength. They are not programming stuff for me. Their
No.
idea of exactly how you should approach computing is completely antithetical to the way my brain works. So, yeah, never not happening.
Yep. Yep.
Yep, there you are.
Yeah.
There he
Same.
froze for me.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
Mm,
I am similar.
mhm. I
Uh,
was going to ask you something else, and of course, it has flown out my left ear. For the moment, it'll come back.
it'll come back. It'll come back.
Sure. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what is your daily routine, or do you have one, or do you work according to how you feel on a given day?
Yeah. So it's a lot of it. I mean, it varies. So I guess it's more on depending on how I feel on a given day. I try to have blocks of time in
Mhm.
which I write. And one of the things that I have been struggling with since the beginning of the pandemic is a lot of my coping mechanisms went away. So something that I used to do on a regular basis is I would get up, I would, you know, answer emails at home. I would do some tidying, and then I would go to a coffee shop and I would write at
Mm,
the coffee shop for a couple of hours, and then I would come home. And
worked for
usually,
Hemingway.
yeah, yeah. Usually around lunch. And then that's not, oh boy, howdy, was that not a thing for like 2 years. And now I'm still in I don't know yet if I'm ready to. So so then trying to figure out what time of day is a good time for me to write. It's frequently like you, late at night after everybody else has gone to bed. So I'm kind of constantly trying to find something that works for me because unfortunately, I don't know, a thing that will happen for me is that I will have a routine and the routine will work really well until something breaks it,
Mm.
and then it will never work again.
Ooh, that's not good.
No, like, and it stops working, and I have to find a new ritual or a new
Uh-huh.
routine. And I understand, like, this is again one of those. Now I understand what's happening, that
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
um that the ADHD brain is interested in things that are new.
mhm,
They're interesting, urgent and challenging.
Yep.
And so maintaining a streak is urgent and it's challenging. And then the writing is interesting, but newness.
Yeah, not so much.
Yeah. And going to a coffee shop gave me the novelty.
Yeah.
Right? And so coffee shops were great because I would get all of those. And it's like, well, you've made the trip. Now, now you've got to get work done. Otherwise this trip is wasted, which would add in the urgency. So, the thing that I have been working on the last year is figuring out how to trigger hyperfocus when I want it. So, so I have a soundtrack that I turn on only when I'm going to write. When I'm at home, I have a sand timer that I turn over only when I'm going to write. And that helps trigger stuff. And then I make sure that I put my phone someplace where I can't turn my phone off in case there's an issue with mom, but I can put it someplace where it takes it's not an easy, let me grab it and, or the scene is very difficult. Why am I looking at my phone right now?
It's there.
Yeah,
exactly.
So putting it someplace else so that it's out of sight, out of mind, has been really helpful. And then figuring out ways to trigger the novelty or the urgencies, things like that. Gold stars, it depresses me that they work. Like literally printing a calendar and drawing a star on the calendar. You wrote today. Good job. You wrote the words you wanted to write. You get 2 stars. I'm like, why does that work?
Well, positive reinforcement, it doesn't matter whether it's stars or something else, but I learned that way early on. The only time I've ever had writer's block in my whole life was when I was writing my PhD dissertation for obvious reasons. Also, we were living in Philadelphia, which was horrible. And yes, nothing against Philadelphia, except that I'm never going to live there ever again. And that makes me very happy. But other than that, yes. But there was that. And my husband was at Wharton doing their MBA program and so forth. So he was working, 14 hours a day and so forth, which is fine. He was mostly doing it where I was, so we'd have lunch and things like that. But still, his entertainment potential was significantly lowered. And so I was having a lot of trouble concentrating on his PhD dissertation and, hating Philadelphia and things like that, having no money, that kind of stuff. But I learned what I finally did out of desperation was to start writing a journal every night. And, it is not, emotions or deep thoughts or ideas for books or anything. It's just a bald account of what I did during the day. I did this, I did that, etc. And I found that it depressed me very much to have to write, did nothing today but read Nero Wolfe novels. And but if I could analyze the data for figure 2.14, then I felt good. I felt fulfilled. I've accomplished something. And I found that the urge to write down that I had done something was enough to make me do it during the day.
Yeah, I've heard someone else call them a have done list. And I was like, oh, that is a good idea. Because there's one of the other things that I find is that we don't we will go out of our way to celebrate somebody else's victories. And the way we approach it with ourselves is that we will attempt to shame ourselves into writing, which doesn't work when we are trying to when you're talking to someone else who's struggling. You don't say, you're a terrible person, you need to write. You don't do that.
No, well, I don't do that to myself either. But I don't know what that says about my psychology. But
and I go through phases where because of the depression expansion pack for my ADHD, it's not like the forms of writers, I don't get writer's block per se. What I get is external circumstances crashing on me. So and that's, which to me is a very different thing. When I have writing, it's generally, I think of it as a gift because it's identifying something that's wrong with the story. And it's I just have to figure out what that wrong thing is. And then I can, and so I'm like, okay, we've slowed down. Why are we slowing down? What is my reader brain trying to tell me about what's happening right now?
Yeah, this would probably be the best place to stop and ask, do you write linearly or do you write in pieces?
I write linearly, but I will also have an outline. And if I have an idea for a scene that is deeper in, that wasn't like, I'll stop and I'll like throw down the pieces of it that occur to me in that moment, but I won't flesh it out all the way.
Yeah.
So like it'll include sometimes pieces of dialogue. It'll include, like, and then they see this thing. But for the most part, I go linearly, and then I also layer, because I come out of theater. The only time that I have had the kind of classic, oh, I'm a terrible writer, this is like, I don't get that angst. The only time that I've ever had that was when I decided not going to show my work to people until I was done with it. And that just caused me to freeze. So what I have learned is that I need to show my work personally. Not everybody does, but I need to show.
I totally do.
Yeah. So that I know whether or not it's working. So, so I write, like I stay three sentences. I stay 3 chapters ahead of my readers.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And so when I finish a new chapter, then they get one of the earlier ones, and that way I can make adjustments, and then I also get little dopamine hits. But because I'm doing that, it means I'm constantly doing small tweaks to get the scene to play the emotion that I want it to play before I let them see the next one, so that they don't always go back and reread the scene. If I've done a really big change, I might ask them to, but usually no.
Yeah. So we're talking here about, a trusted group of beta readers.
Yeah. So I'm basically, it's the people. It used to be my newsletter, but my newsletter has too many people now. And the last time I said anybody on my newsletter, it was like 100 people signed up to read, and I was like, oh no, we can't. That's too many. So now it's my Patreon supporters, and then I have a Discord server called the Lady Astronaut Club.
Cool.
And so those 2 groups, and I send them through at different times, and then I always have like, I have a first reader who sees it before anybody, and she sees it as soon as I'm done. And I have sensitivity readers or subject matter experts who see it, like with Tesla. I worked with someone who has a PTSD service dog, because I wanted to make sure that, like,
that rang very true. Yeah.
So we have a service dog. Thanks. So we have Gimlet is based on a compilation of like 3 dogs. One is Eileen Cook's dog Gimlet, who's, have you met the actual Gimlet?
No, I haven't.
Oh my goodness. So Gimlet is the most ridiculously cute dog I have ever met in my entire life. Like, doesn't look like a real dog. Little Westie, so cute. So I was at Eileen's house, and I needed to name the Asta of this. And I'm like, Gimlet. And I was like, you know what? Also a Westie, just like the real Gimlet. So based on the real Gimlet, then based on my mom's service dog, who's a stability dog. And he also has a command. He is where I got the go say hi command, because she doesn't like people paying attention to her. And when she's seated, he doesn't have to do his job, because his job is basically he's a walker on 4 legs. So she could say, go say hi, and he would take all of the attention away from her. Back in the before times when, going out in the world was a thing. And then the 3rd dog is the service dog of my sensitivity reader, and that's a PTSD service dog.
I see.
So compilation, like, 3.
You had a lot to choose from there.
Yeah. But I'm also fond of Gimlet. So.
absolutely.
I'm glad that that she rang true.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, she's one of the best characters in the book. Not saying that there are no other ones, but but
No,
definitely
no,
amongst my favorites. So,
she's definitely stealing the show. There's on Twitter, there's
mhm.
hashtag Gimlet, hashtag Team Gimlet, and hashtag Team Fontaine. Those are
I like
the
Fantine too.
yeah, those are the two characters that seem to be stealing the book.
Yes, great dialogue.
Those are so much
You
fun
can
to
call
read.
it dialogue.
Right. Just just diatribe monologue cursing without actually
Absolutely.
using any
For
curse
sure.
words.
Yeah. Yeah, now this book is, as far as I can tell, a complete departure from anything else you've ever written. Yeah,
Mm-mm.
but what was the impetus to write this? Just thinking about cruising?
Thinking about cruising, thinking about wanting to do the Thin Man in Space, but also the like I'm one of those people, like I read all over the map.
Mm.
I my short fiction, I write all over the map. And I didn't really real like there's things that you do one does consciously and things that one does without realizing it. And I consciously wanted to move from the Regency stuff that I was doing in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be able to write science fiction, so I've been slowly stepping forward in
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
timeline. But I just realized that the first novel that I completed, kind of after the I'm gonna do this novel thing. Like there's novel zero. Um, there's a novel that I wrote for my niece and nephews when they moved to China. But after I did that one, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to try to write a novel.
Mm-hmm.
And that first novel was a science fiction murder mystery.
Yeah.
So for me, it kind of feels like, yeah, of course I'm writing a science fiction murder mystery.
Why not?
It was a lot easier this time than the first time, because the first time I was trying to figure out how to do a mystery and trying to figure out how to write a novel at the same time. And that was very,
very hard.
Yeah, it was not entirely successful there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I sympathize. Originally I was intending to write mystery novels just because I read more of them than anything else.
Mhm.
And then I said, no, mysteries have plots. I'm not sure I can do that. Maybe I'll write something easier. So that's why I chose historical fiction.
Right.
Here we are.
Right. Yeah, because historical fiction is so easy.
Oh yeah, it is. You can look it up. That's what I thought. Is that I'm a research professor. I have access to the world's libraries. It seems easier to look things up than make them up. And if I have no imagination, I can steal things from the historical record, which actually works pretty well. So,
yeah.
Give you a put up anytime.
There is a certain aspect to that. Like I think of the world building that I do when I'm doing science fiction as being my own reference library.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, it was nice to be able to just look things up when I was doing the Regency things. On the flip side of that, when someone will always find something that you got wrong.
Or that they think you got wrong.
Or that they think, yeah, also true. Like the number of things that people have written to me about that they are convinced are wrong. And I'm like, no, that one.
No, really.
No.
You get a lot of
this
people
is the person
criticizing the French, and it's like 18th century French,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh, Patrick, you have rejoined us.
Hey. Oh, you're here. Nice to see your face. Yeah.
So Mary Robinette, one of the things that I was really enthusiastic with your books is the fact that you've gone into this is a really strong mystery. And Diana, you've written mysteries as well with Lord John Gray.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really curious on both of your takes, having moved from maybe kind of a classic science fiction or a historical fiction bent, and then moving yourself over into writing a mystery, and what that was like for you, where you had to shift your thought process a little bit.
Not so much. Yeah.
How was that for you? Since you said that you avoided it originally because
to start with, because I said mysteries have plots.
Yeah.
Having written, something like 500,000 words of plot, I said I think I can do that now.
Yeah.
Actually, mysteries are much easier because they're more tightly focused. When I'm writing one of the big books, I have multiple storylines. like the way my hands look when I'm waving them in
Yeah.
front of the camera with ADHD stuff. Yeah. But if you're writing a mystery, you have one inciting event, you know, presumably the murder or something that leads to the murder or something. And, you know, that gives you a point that you know, you can start there. This is always a problem when you write scattershot like I do, is where you're going to start on any given day. And I have to wait until I have what I call a kernel, which is a very vivid image, a line of dialogue, anything I can sense concretely that I can put down. Well, for me, the murder is the point d'appui for that book. And so I write that down, you know, what happened, you know. Sometimes I'll just write from a distance, so to speak. What I always write things called what I know about this book, and I just, you know, spell everything. And that I always stop halfway down the page because I now have my kernel and I go and write it. And then the next week I'll write another, what do I know? But, you know, it gives me a foothold. And from there I can expand. And the thing about historical fiction is you do look up a lot of things. So I run into things like, you know, what would stop Lord John from realizing this? And I was thinking, well, you know, what did he have for lunch? You know, maybe I gave him a brain fart, something like that. And so I have to look up what he would have been having for lunch. And you know, I'm thinking, well, there was asparagus that day for lunch, you know, so we have the scent of asparagus pea in the gentleman's club, which kind of leads into the chamber pots and, you know, different things like that. Anyway, you know how it works. Down the rat hole.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had what I decided to do with this one was to try the Agatha Christie method, which I had used on The Relentless Moon. And the Agatha Christie method is that you give multiple people motive and opportunity, but you don't. But she did not plot her novels. So multiple people get motive and opportunity, and then when you get to the end, she would figure out who it was at the same time as everybody else did, and she would produce the single clue that it's like tied everything together. So I did not go that far. I knew there were a couple of murders because, I mean, spoilers. There's murder on the ship and more than one body, but I knew how some of them I wanted them to work because there was because of a science fictional thing that I wanted to use, a technology thing. But I was not always 100% certain who was involved in doing that. When I was first, I had several people that I was like, I think this one and this one. So I got I mostly free wrote about the first half to three quarters. And then I sat down and reverse engineered an outline. And then this is true fact, my cats ran across the note cards that I had spread across the floor. And then I was like, actually, that's a better sequence. So the yoga scene was in a totally different spot in my original outline. But I then looked at all of the pieces that I had in play, figured out where I needed to go. And the nice thing about a mystery is, you know what the ending has to be. You know that the ending is to the person and justice is served. That's what a mystery does. It's why we like them. And so I knew that was where I needed to go, that we needed to catch the person and justice was served. So that just meant I just had to tent post my way between everything that I knew leading up to that I discovered in the end, and then go back in and adjust stuff so that you know, that people, it's like, oh, I don't think I have this person on stage right now, which means that they do not have an opportunity to commit this murder. How can I get them off stage?
Exactly.
The twin.
The twin.
Always twins.
You think you're
joking. No, always twins.
Always twins. You can never, you know, if there's twins on board, you know, one of them was really the murderer.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of women in science, both of you write really strong women. You know, Claire obviously as a nurse, Mary Robinette, all of your characters are strong in math or computer science, or, you know, and I really admire that. Did you have this intent to kind bring women more towards the forefront of science and math, and have them be kind of strong healers or into the science aspect of it before writing your books, or was this just something that came as an idea?
Completely fortuitous. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
yeah.
had nothing like that in mind at all. Yeah. And
with-
just if I could put in a footnote here, speaking as a writer of historical fiction, not all strong women are, the modern view of, kick-ass
Mhm.
STEM. I hate that word. But the women have been extremely strong since the very beginning.
Yeah.
That's that they may be working in a different area. Their strength
Right.
comes through in a differently structured life. So with luck, we show a number of those people through the historical streamline as well. However, Claire kind of needs to be modern just because she was when I started writing her, and she wouldn't shut up and talk like an 18th century person. But that's why she is who she is because I didn't have a choice.
Yeah. And Jane, my main character in the Glamorous Histories, and Ginger in Ghost Talkers, they aren't in STEM. Elma had to be because I needed her to be an astronaut. And then Tesla, I had some choices there, and one of the thoughts that went through my head, honestly, was, like, she's an heiress. What is she an heiress of? And I'm like, this is a science fiction novel. Let me have her be in tech. And further, and this is pretty, crass commercialism, knowing that I am coming out of the the Calculating Stars, the Lady Astronaut universe, and that I had an audience that was very excited about women in STEM. And the number of women that I had who talked to me after, I say it's just commercial, but it's also that I had so many women talk to me after Calculating Stars came out that said, like, that they hadn't seen themselves represented, that seeing a woman doing, who was in the sciences, doing science, was really meaningful to them. And so I was thinking about that when I was deciding what she was. I briefly thought about having her be an actor, but it was there were other pieces of the book. I didn't want her to be too familiar with stagecraft, because some of the other things that I had happening in the book, which just, it was like, well, she's a roboticist. That's what she does. She
That worked very well.
designs robots. Very large robots. In my own headcanon is that she is the daughter or granddaughter of a famous inventor, a very wealthy inventor, who had a suit all of an entire metal suit that could fly and shoot things out of his hands, but definitely not in any way a copyrighted character.
Definitely not.
Definitely not a copyrighted character. That would be.
Well, my day job is in STEM, so for me, it's always nice to see women being positively represented, and but especially in my field where I'm doing basically computer programming for a local hospital, and it's basically 50-50 men and women, and it's really but more and more women are coming on board, and I think that having that representation in fiction is excellent. And on top of that, your science is, I mean, you have to write and you have to fictionalize a little bit, but your science is really top notch in your books as well. You really take a lot of care and effort to make sure that things are accurate.
Yeah, I do. Probably more than I need to sometimes. It was one of the things that was really joyful when I was working on the ship was that I had access to Max Fagan, who's a rocket engineer, and he was so amazingly helpful. I'm gonna since this is Zoom, I'm going to do a thing that I never get to do in real person events, and I'm going to share screen if I may. Although I think you have to enable it.
All right, let me give this a go.
I was just for folks, I was I come out of theater. There we go. So I have to rely on experts for a lot of things. So this is the Lindgren. This is my interplanetary spaceship. So what he's built for me here is this spreadsheet that is so massive. So I needed to know what my launch date was, what my acceleration, the maximum abort. We've got our rough route, voyage time. This is when the flippy poo happens. But he figured out exactly how big the ship was. That's a schematic top down. This is what it looks like from the side. That's the ship itself. And then over here, this ridiculousness, this tells me the lag time on communications. So because I had a calendar that I kept, and I would compare the calendar to where we were on the voyage and be like, all right, so we are on, day 1 or day 2, and that means that I have a 5-minute delay. And because they're traveling under constant thrust. So I love this kind of thing. I could not generate this kind of thing on my own. I mean, this is just it's such a beautiful use of spreadsheeting.
That's gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, I never get to show that.
I'm glad you did.
And now you do, and it'll be in perpetuity. So that's one of the exciting things about it.
When they do the anniversary edition of your book,
right.
You want to put that in the end papers?
Yeah. I did draw. I gave them the map, and so they, I drew a prettier version of that, and then they made it even prettier. We do have a map in the front of the ship, in front of the book, but it does not have the ridiculous spreadsheet.
Oh well.
I actually that spreadsheet made my little nerd heart sing. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I've found that there's a certain crossover between my readers and people who really appreciate that particular spreadsheet.
Absolutely.
Like, are you gonna? You want to see a spreadsheet? And they're like, "Ooh."
Everybody loves those spreadsheets.
That's right.
So in terms of, I've got to make a little plug. You, for a few years, you were the president of SIFWA as well. And so I've got to ask, what was life like being the president of SIFWA? What was it like helping run? For those who don't know, it's the Science Fiction Writers of America.
Actually, the name recently changed. So it's been Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, and it changed to Science Fiction Writers Association because we wanted to make it, and this happened after after my term, but we have been wanting to make it clear that you do not have to be living in North America to be a member. So Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association.
Nice.
Anyway, so yes.
You evolved it. And that's part of what I wanted to ask was your evolution of it, because you really were integral for kind of expanding this and what was that like? What was and who's running it this year now that you've moved on?
So Jeffy Kennedy, who served on the board with me, is president now, and she's been doing a wonderful job. So my term began in July of 2019. So the last year and a half of it was just COVID pivots. And I was fortunate. I say just, we had other things that we were doing, but that was a really big focus, took up a lot of time and energy. And I had a very good team that was working for me. What I generally find is that it's an organization that is it is forward thinking, but we get a reputation for not being forward thinking, I think, because we surface problems so often.
Mm.
So a lot of the stuff that's been happening more recently with the Me Too movement and sexism, that had already happened in the science fiction community with Gamergate. A lot of the stuff that's happening in the larger world in the with diversity initiatives and the blowback from them had already happened. The way that we were dealing with a movement that was called the Sad Puppies and the Rabid Puppies. So we're getting those, we're running just a slightly bit ahead, but that also means that we are calling out the problems, which then it's like, we have had a long history of being an old boys club, which is also true of a lot of other fields now, and has been. But when you are looking at who's in charge and who's winning awards, that there is a shift that has happened, and it's not like the only reason I could be involved in causing and pushing that is because the momentum was already there.
So what do you see as the future of fantasy and science fiction? Because I see it as becoming more of an inclusive place with lots of different voices. And there's a lot of exciting new subjects that are being explored, but also I see a little bit of a push to the traditional as well. So I'm seeing it kind of all across the board right now, but at the same time, just really good writing.
So my own take on this is that where we are right now, and this is, I think, you'll see this in a couple of different, manifest in a couple of different ways, but historically, in times of strife, musical theater, comedy, and nostalgia take off. And I think that one of the things, the reasons that mysteries are selling very well right now, and a lot of people are publishing them, is because they trigger a lot of nostalgia things, a lot of nostalgia feelings for people. But there is at the end of the book, things have been set right most of the time. I mean, there are the oddballs, but for the most part, you get to the end of the book and things have been set right. I think that for the next little bit, we are going to see more science fiction murder mysteries. Certainly this season, we've got a lot of them coming out, like Mur Lafferty's Station Eternity, for example. Yes, I also think that we're going to see things being more inclusive. I think that one of the other things that I'm looking forward to, and I believe will happen, is that we will see different styles of stories start to happen. But I think that that's something that's going to have to wait. Some aspects of that will have to wait until things become a little more stable. Because when we are in points of stability, that's when you get experimental stuff. That's when you get dystopia. That's when you get thought pieces. But when we talk about writing in the Western world, there's a very specific plot style that we follow, and in other parts of the world, there are different plot structures. And so I think that we're going to start to see that, and that's going to have an impact on the larger market. And I think I think that we are about to come into a time, we're gonna go through a period right now of growth, and those are always uncomfortable. But I think that we are like coming into this period where we're going to have just glorious, interesting new voices and new ways of telling stories and new ways of reaching audience. I'm really excited about what's coming.
We'll plug there.
Yes. I mean, there's a reason that I went the nostalgia route, like
Oh, yeah.
Thin Man in Space. It's like, oh yeah, no, let's and I tried for funny. I tried real hard for funny. It's harder for
made it.
Oh, good.
It is. I was going to ask you, Diana, because your set in your series, you don't you don't follow those trends, but yet it seems like historical fiction always does really well.
Yeah, well, some of it is nostalgia, some of it is curiosity. People
Mhm.
want to know how things used to be because there are a lot of ill-educated young people these days who don't have the faintest clue that things were not always the way they are now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this causes a lot of interesting reader letters when they're writing and saying, "Oh, why did this person do that?" You know, and saying, "Well, because," you know.
Yeah.
Yes, we didn't always believe in bathing, and I'm glad
Mhm.
we do now.
Yeah, well, you know, there's things about bathing. Evidently,
Yeah,
if you go without bathing, but you are, you know, basically sanitary, you're not marinating and you know stuff, and your skin will in fact establish a bacterial layer, and you don't stink. You know, as
yeah.
long as you don't yeah, do bloody things or things that will cause you to have stuff on your skin. But otherwise, you don't necessarily have to have a daily bath in order to be, you know, socially acceptable.
Yeah, no, there's some really good, really good research about that. So from the historical aspect, people did not stink the way we think they did,
That's right.
and also the science of it. Bathing every day is actually probably really bad for us.
I'd say
Um,
so. Yeah.
yeah, there's a whole microbiome thing that we are disrupting on a daily basis when we bathe every day.
Hmm.
And that's why there are so many products that are out there to try to help you with all of that, like all of the skin problems, because you're stripping stuff off.
Yep.
So yes, I am glad that we have antibiotics.
That's a big help. Yes.
Yes, that aspect of modern life I'm really excited about. But the bathing every day is not actually a thing we need to do.
No, no, no. I gave up using soap, you know, when I was like 18 or so. Have not used it since.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Well,
yeah.
you know, they say that antibacterial soap, some of it is actually not so good for you. So
Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm.
we'll see what comes out from then. Um, in terms of readers' questions, Mary Robinette, one of the questions that I get asked quite a bit here on Facebook is your cat. If you could let us know about your smart cat.
Yes. So for people who have no idea what we're talking about, my cat Elsie is part of a study or participating in a project called Augmented Interspecies Communications. And I was a skeptic of this before we started doing this. We're part of a study with I think like 6,000 animals. Um, and she uses buttons to talk. So this was begun in 2019 by a woman named Christina Hunger, who was a speech and language therapist. And she was like, what happens if I use the same techniques that I use with my nonverbal patients with my new puppy?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is that she has a dog with a 60-word vocabulary and a spineless movement. Elsie has 84 buttons now. The newest button is thank you, which she may not need because she will often use love you to mean thank you. So does she need that word? Nah, but I say it often enough to her that I thought, let me try giving it to her because it's been an interesting journey with her. She is the I had read that cats and dogs were, smart as an average 3 or 4 year old, and I definitely have a fur toddler. I am traveling right now, or she would be here, almost certainly. I have done a number of these interview, speech, whatever things, or just meetings. And I'll be having this conversation with someone. Oh, yes. Well, I think that's a very interesting idea. We should totally, all done, all done. Loud, all done. I'm like, sorry, that's not anything. We're fine here. All done. I'm like, thank you, Elsie. Not now. Mary Robinette working. All done later. Later now. I'm like, no, later is not now.
So
Yeah.
Mary Robinette, what is on your horizon? And Diana, can you give us a small little taste of what's on yours at all? Is there anything that you can divulge or not yet?
Hmm. Well, let's see. There are a few things that I can't, and there are a few things that I can. The people at Sony expressed some interest in entertaining the idea of a prequel, which the executive producers from the Stars TV Outlander show wanted to do, which is the story of Jamie Fraser's parents, Brian and Ellen. And that's back in the earlier Jacobite Rising, 1715, 1719 period. So they were interested in that. And I, in fact, had that already on my to-do list, you might say. And in the last few years, I've just been, writing small bits of it whenever a scene came to me. And so I had, chunks, but very disconnected chunks and so forth. So when suddenly Sony decides to announce that, well, this project is in development, I was going, and what does that mean exactly? And well, the next thing is that one of those, bottom feeder sites that pops up whenever you touch Google came up and had a piece about the prequel, and they were pitching it as though this was a done deal. It was definitely going to happen. And Diana is involved as a consulting producer. There actually is not such a thing as a consulting producer. Anyway, somebody showed me that and I said, well, I have no idea what's going on, meaning, there's no such thing as a consulting producer. It's not, ongoing, et cetera, et cetera. The only thing that I know is, and I just said, I have no idea what's going on. So this caused a lot of rash about people going, oh, well, they're trying to do it without her. We can't have that. And so somebody called up and said, you're kind of worrying the people at Sony. They think maybe you don't want to be involved in it. And I said, no, I would like to be involved in it. It's just that there's a lot of, speculation on the basis of absolutely nothing going on here, which is all I intended to convey. So we had, a long chat about, how can we work on this? I have a novel, which, you can do a lot more in a novel than you can do on a screen. But what you do on a screen is very, very visible and extremely vivid. And so you have to choose carefully which pieces you're going to use and how you're going to use those to construct what you're doing. I can grow mine organically, like crystals in the basement. And so we sort of left it that I will continue working on the book. They can stop me. And they will continue working on their development of their pilot script and whatever else they intend to do for Sony and all that. But we will keep in touch. They will show me what they're doing. I'll show them what I'm doing. Because there may be things that I'm doing that will go off in a different direction, but they can use what I've done right here. Or they may be intending to do this in a different direction. And either I might say, well, that's interesting. I wonder if I could work that in where I'm going. Or I might say, no, that would never work because, my vision of this character is completely different. And I better tell them that just in case. So we trade bits of information. It's a very low key process at the moment.
That's great. My thing is I'm working on the fourth Lady Astronaut book. I do NaNoWriMo, so I am like 17,000 words in right now.
Wow.
So we'll see. We'll see how it is. I already know that the end that I was aiming for is not the right ending. But it's a good ending. It's just the wrong one. So that's always fun. I'm not sure what that's going to mean yet, but like I outline and then I just rearrange and revise the outline, which is why I'm like, do I work linearly? I mean, I write linearly, but I also have this whole outlining thing, which is very jumping around a bit. I think we all like, there are parts that where we put the planning parts and where we put the discovery parts, we all have to do both things. It's just we do them at different spots depending on our brain.
It's so neat. So Mary Robinette, I was just thinking about this. You've been coming to our bookstore either virtually or in person really since, I want to say, Of Noble Family.
That seems right. Yeah,
which is if anybody gets a chance and has an interest in Regency romance, but with a strong mystery and great characters, the Glamorous Histories are really an absolutely wonderful series to get into and dip your toes into. The Lady Astronaut. I always want to say Calculating Stars, but the Lady Astronauts also spectacular in terms of historical science fiction, but speculative fiction. It's a good cross between both. And The Spareman is just wonderful. It really is. For those of you who want a really great mystery to curl up, maybe make a few of the cocktails in this book.
Yeah, I think we can
Because
talk about that.
I mean, yeah, no, you need a, I could think of a good drinking game where you just every night you read a chapter and drink
Yeah,
one.
but only one chapter, right? Yeah. So every chapter starts with a cocktail recipe.
Mhm.
Yes.
And there are 0 proof cocktail recipes in there because I wanted everybody to be able to participate. But yeah, it's there's a lot of them.
It's such a great book, and it's such a pleasure to have both of you here tonight. Diana, can I do a little poison pen plug real quick?
Absolutely.
Okay. So for those of you who would like a inscribed book, please order sooner rather than later, because Diana would like to spend time with her family during the holidays.
True.
And we don't want her to have the claw. So please, if you're thinking of
Too
ordering
late.
for the holidays, if you're thinking of ordering for the holidays, please do so. And what better book to go in anybody's stocking but the Spare Man right here.
Absolutely.
With your boarding package.
It
Yes.
is with your boarding package that you'll get with your book,
Uh-huh.
and signed by Mary Robinette. And we only have, a handful left. So if you're thinking, or if you're on the fence, probably better to order now, and then you can maybe buy another one for a gift. Spread the word, because Mary Robinette, you are one of my favorite science fiction writers, and thank you so much for writing this series.
Aw.
It's really an awesome series.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really glad.
Mhm.
It means a lot. Because you've read a lot of mysteries. So thank you so much.
We read a lot of books here. I mean,
Yeah.
Diana does too.
Yeah. Thank you for this, Diana. This was a delight getting a
It's
chance to
lovely
talk to you.
talk with you. Yeah,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
my pleasure.
And for those of you who maybe had a question but weren't quite sure what to ask tonight, Mary Robinette, where can people find you?
Sure. They can find me. The easiest thing is to visit my website, maryrobinettekowal.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. Right now, we are doing a costume contest. And if you enter the costume contest, you get invited to a captain's dinner. Not if you enter, if you win the costume contest, if you're one of our winners, you get invited to a captain's dinner, which is basically a small dinner with me. We will have them in lunar, Terran, and Martian times. So useful for everybody. But there's information on that. Sign up for my newsletter, and then Patreon. If you're a writer and you want someone to help you with writing, I teach, and $25 a month, you get to get lessons from me, and you also get access to 4 years of archives.
Oh,
That's a good deal.
Yeah, I think so.
And Diana, probably, where can everybody find you, just as a little plug?
now let's see. I'm on Twitter, writer_DG. I have a Facebook page, which is author Diana Gabaldon, no spaces. And I have a website, dianagabaldon.com. So between the three, you ought to be able to track me down.
And you're active everywhere. So, and if you're in Phoenix, you may have a Diana Gabaldon sighting. You never know. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for tonight. And I hope everybody has a really nice, we're getting down just to a few days before that Thanksgiving dinner. So I hope you all have a really nice Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Thank you. You as
too,
well.
Patrick.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye, guys. Have a wonderful
nice
night.
to see you
Thank
both.
you for watching.
And,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Enjoy
Thank
the
you
rest
to
of
all
your
of our
evening.
fans on Twitter and Facebook, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good
Thanks.
night.
Good night.
Good night. Well, good night to you both. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Diana.
Oh, my
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah. Really. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Not a problem at all. Great. Well, I have dogs clawing at the door downstairs.
I-